The CEO said so many bullish things in the earnings call. In this video, I will recap everything that was said. But first, let's quickly go over the Q3 earnings. Vehicle margins increased to 14.7%. This is going to increase further. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And of course, revenue, a record 3 billion revenues, 3 billion US dollars. Very nice. And net loss actually decreased under 500 million. So only 488.9 million. This is very, very nice. And of course, this is a decrease of 33.7% from the quarter before and 38% from the same quarter last year. This is overall looking very, very nice. And of course, they have plenty of cash on hand, about 5 billion cash on hand. Absolutely amazing. But most important is what they said about chip sales, robots, future margins, and profitability going forward. Now, the first thing we got to talk about is, of course, the guidance being lowered. The guidance was dropped from 150K for Q4 down to 120K to 125K. But the goal of Q4 profitability still remains. So NIO CEO had to explain this in earnings call, and he said that this was because of the big impact of early removal of trade-in subsidies. And this not only was in Shanghai, but also here in Beijing. We witnessed it as well. It was abrupt, okay? It just all of a sudden disappeared, which was quite surprising. Now, of course, NIO is subsidizing for the tax increase next year, but NIO CEO has said that nobody can subsidize for the trade-in subsidy because that is a significant amount of money, and this is not something that can be done. So it is affecting Envo sales. Okay, he said it outright that this trading subsidy being gone is affecting Envo sales, and there's more impact also on existing vehicle models that launched a while ago. For example, the existing NIO ES6, etc. However, for cars like the ES8, which has a high backlog, it is not so much affected. So it's mostly Envo being affected by this. But he reiterated that the overall margins are still decent despite this. But because of the subsidy being phased out, we may not see the year-end sales increase like we've seen in previous fourth quarters. So this is mainly why the guidance was dropped to 120K to 125K. However, I still personally expect that it could be possible for them to still achieve 150K, but it does seem like the impact of this is pretty substantial. And then he also hinted that we could see overall margins at 18%, vehicle margins at 18% in Q4, which will be even better. And he also talked about how non-car revenue is getting better and better. And this, of course, includes like battery upgrade fees, of course, NIO Life products, service. Their service centers are profitable, and they started charging for so many different things when it comes to servicing the car. So this is all very good for the shareholders. Operating efficiency will increase more and more down the line, and losses will reduce by more and more down the line as they become more efficient. Now, when it comes to the purchase tax increase going into 2026, NIO will be subsidizing it for the ES8, but only the ES8. That means the other cars will not be subsidized when it comes to the tax increase. So you could possibly expect sales to drop a little bit for those other vehicle models going into the next year. They won't be dialing back R&D expenses, and it will remain consistent at about 2 billion RMB per quarter, or roughly around 300 million US dollars per quarter. But they will try to improve efficiency, meaning they will try to get more out of what they spend. Okay, so they're still going to spend the same amount in terms of R&D. And then in terms of the SG&A to revenue ratio, it is about 12%, and they hope to keep it at about 10%. So of course, that's totally achievable. And next year, their target is to achieve profitability for the entire year. Okay, not just a single quarter, but the entire year they want to be profitable, and that is their goal. Now, of course, NIO CEO has backed this up with the fact that battery electric vehicle sales have increased in the first 3 quarters of 2025. The BEV sales have increased 33% versus just 3% for EREVs. So clearly, more people are buying pure electric vehicles compared to extended range electric vehicles. So he is very confident, of achieving this target going forward. And then in terms of vehicle margins, they want to target 20% margins. So we're going to get 18% margins, vehicle margins in Q4, and 20% margins in 2026. And then he talked about some of the very, very, very juicy information. This is, of course, selling the chips. And he's gave us some crazy big information, huge win-win-win situations. They're leveraging existing partners to sell chips, and it's also not exclusive. So they're not just selling chips to one company, they're selling it to many other companies. And also, they're selling chips to companies that are in non-automotive industries, including robots, because robots also need to be able to see and predict what's going on around them. So this is massive news, all right, that they're selling chips not just to car companies, but also robot companies. What? Yeah, absolutely amazing. And then he talked about how margins in Q1 next year will be better than Q1 this year, but worse than Q4 this year. Okay, so that is what it is. Now they've talked about the global strategy. Right now they're switching the global strategy from direct to sales to franchising partner model. And of course, they're launching the Firefly and Envo first, actually Firefly first in many different markets, and also including Singapore, Thailand, all that kind of stuff. They've already signed the partnerships with those, and then gradually introduce Envo, and then afterwards introduce NIO. So that's their strategy for those global expansion effort. Now, they're also working on products under the 200,000 RMB price level. The 100,000 to 300,000 RMB market is the largest in China, and this is where the majority of sales happen. So they will gradually introduce new products in this price range to, of course, take market share from guys like BYD and Leap Motor. They will gradually introduce new generation products instead of all at once, which is what they've done before. So R&D is more spread out, just like what they're doing now. They haven't updated the ES6, EC6, or ET5 and ET5T to the 3.0 900 volt architecture yet. So they're doing it over time so that they can, so that the R&D is more spread out. And then they talked about they will continue investment into AI, including autonomous driving, the Nomi chatbot, and also internal AI usage, and make sure that the AI investment efficiency and return on investment is higher. And then, of course, next year there will be 3 large SUVs, the ES9, which is the flagship top-of-the-line car with steer-by-wire, rear-wheel steering, 900-volt architecture, the hydraulic suspension, and that will be the top-of-the-line SUV. And then, of course, the ES7, which is like a smaller version of the ES8, but 5-seater. And then the Envo L80, which is the smaller version of the Envo L90, but 5-seater. And, of course, these cars will all benefit from economics of scale because they do share similar parts. And, of course, they're able to negotiate better prices for those parts. And with that, they're able to achieve 20% margins overall. So that will be pretty nice going forward. But the biggest thing is, of course, that chip sale to robot companies, to all sorts of companies. And he said that, some of them are already done. All right, that's pretty nice. So, and they're, of course, actively pursuing more and more. And of course, with the NVIDIA uncertainty going on, they kind of have no choice. They have to rely on a domestic chip supplier, and NIO is becoming that company. So I think in the future, chip sales will just absolutely increase their profitability like many folds going into the future. So that is definitely something that I look forward to. What do you guys think about the earnings? Let me know in the comments down below. Overall, I think this is very nice. And going into the future, even though delivery guidance has been dropped, profitability for Q4, the chance of that has been dropped, has been decreased. But overall, I'm very happy with the results we got. So yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.